Well, this summer, two major movies are coming out that sort of restarting the comic movie universe. Joining us now to talk about this is Eric Woodward, the owner of Scratch and Spin, and local comic book author and illustrator Noah Van Sciver. Fellas, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so before we can get to the major summer blockbusters, we do have a movie that's coming out, Marvel Thunderbolts. What do you all think about Thunderbolts, and is this what Marvel is banking on?
I mean, yeah, I think so. I think they need something really big, and I think this could be it. I think I've seen a lot of people are really excited about it, and I mean, we'll see what happens. You never can tell, though, right? So,
right. We know obviously this is like, you know, the Marvel's version almost of DC with the Suicide Squad, but they don't necessarily have any powers. But how is that going to flow?
Well, it's one of those things where the characters in Thunderbolts are kind of like anti-heroes, and some are actually even villains, and they team up together like DC Suicide Squad to basically save the day. Now, you've got some characters that do not have any powers, like Black Widow, or you've got some that are enhanced, like I guess. Red Guardian, basically has like the Russian version of the Captain America formula.
Yeah.
So these characters basically are teaming up together to basically save the day. And I agree with Noah. I think that people are really excited about this film.
Yeah.
I think that Marvel has kind of had their ups and downs over the last couple of phases,
right.
And I think this is going to be the beginning of the kind of like refreshing of the Marvel universe. I think I read recently that it has 95% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Well, that's pretty high.
Oh, definitely. And of course, Marvel has had all of the cast out doing a lot of PR for the film. So it looks like it's going to be really exciting.
Mm-hmm. It really does. Something else a lot of people obviously are waiting on pins and needles for: DC Universe, James Gunn restarting with his version of Superman. Of course, this one stars David Corenswet. A lot of people were thinking that hopefully Henry Cavill would have made a reappearance. Obviously, after that blunder we saw with Black Adam, and a lot of people were like, how could you all do this to us? But so here we have it. Do you all think this particular Superman movie is the lifeline that DC Comics needs?
yeah, it should be. It should be the thing that all the other DC movies should be attached to. You know, it's the trunk of the tree for DC, I feel like. But they just have to nail the tone. That's the tricky part that they keep stumbling on. Superman is a bright, happy character. You know, he represents hope. And I feel like they keep failing with that in the films that when they try to redo it. It's like they miss the mark there. It gets too dark, and that's not really what Superman is about. So hopefully, I'm hoping that they turn that around, they get that this time. We'll see.
Eric, what do you think that James needs to do, or what does this movie have to do to kind of jumpstart people's hopes back in DC?
I agree with Noah. I think that that Superman is the superhero. He's the first superhero, created in 1938. He represents hope, the best that a person can be. Superman, was raised by human beings in Kansas and Smallville. He has, all of the traditional elements of what being a human is. And if anything, Superman leads us to be what we can be, and that's what he should represent. And I hope James Gunn, obviously, he himself is a huge comics fan. He's not just a filmmaker.
I think
he's
he
not just a Hollywood guy. Yeah, and I think that in other words, Superman will be the launch for DC's overall universe. And because he's such an iconic character, I think the tone that he sets with this film will hopefully set the tone for the entire DC universe, which is really, each character is really varied. In the previous films that Zack Snyder did, they were all went through a very dark filter.
They were all Batman movies, basically, which are dark, and you can't have that with Superman.
Exactly. So. Batman and Superman are really two sides of the same coin.
Right.
Batman's the dark side, Superman's the light side, and you have to have that balance, and I think that's one of the wonderful things about the DC universe is they represent all kinds of people that we would see every day. Even though these people have almost godlike powers, they're still human at heart. And I think James Gunn's specialty, especially if you've seen the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, is he brings the heart, he brings the humanity to these superhero characters.
So another universe that a lot of people are waiting to see, like this movie, Fantastic Four. There've been different versions of this Fantastic Four. There was one with Michael B. Jordan at one point. There was one with Jessica Alba. So now we have a brand new one. So in this particular version, which is interesting when we saw the trailer, Susan Storm is pregnant in this version. Why do you all believe that they decided to go in this direction?
Just to set up a future movie. That's all.
Okay. All right.
But it's the same. The same thing. They have to get the tone of Fantastic Four right, and they can't be embarrassed about the source material. And that seems to be the big problem with Hollywood and comic book movies, is that you can tell right away how they deal with the costume. If the costume is comic book accurate, they're like, okay, they're not embarrassed about the source material. If they change it, then you're like, okay, well now they're like a little bit afraid. But you can't be afraid. Just do it straight like the comic books are drawn, and you'll get everybody on your side.
And why do you all think that the setting is not a modern day, but in the past, in the 60s, 70s type of vibe? Why do you all feel that?
Well, I mean, that's the way the comic book was. That's the era that the comic book is from. And I think maybe it just to kind of become like a slip underneath everything else that we've seen from those movies, from Marvel movies, and slip underneath. And here's the foundation of it, actually. This is where it all kind of begins. This is before everything else you've seen. And is it in a different universe? I don't even know what they're.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, of course, Marvel has introduced the idea of the multiverse, which you saw in like the Loki TV series, the recent Deadpool and Wolverine film, and so that's what they're doing, is they're basically setting this Fantastic Four film in a alternate universe, which is basically the 60s, but it's 60s sci-fi retro, and really, like Noah was saying, I mean, the comic was created in the 60s. It's considered the first family of Marvel, and that's ultimately what they are. Is they are superheroes secondary. They're a family first. And I think that's the tone that they need to nail, and that's the concept that they're trying to establish, is that this is a group of friends and family that happen to get superheroic powers through chance, and it's how they apply those powers towards humanity, the world, and themselves. So I'm really excited to see how they go. The casting, I think, is really great.
Yeah.
It's very interesting that they
bright.
just...
Yeah. It's a bright-looking movie.
Yeah, very, very colorful. And if you look at the trailer, it's all very retro design, but retro sci-fi.
Absolutely. And for the final question here, we talk about Fantastic Four.
Sure.
How about with Dr. Doom? Do you all think it was a good idea for them to cast Robert Downey Jr., who we've known for years as Iron Man, but now he's quote unquote a villain?
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna withhold judgment on it. Like I wasn't excited by that, but I'm like, well, I have to trust Kevin Feige. There might be something good about that, but I wasn't. I was like, oh, really? That's who Dr. Doom is?
Yeah, my initial reaction, I agree, was I was like, oh, they're trotting out Robert Downey Jr. because they want to kind of like go with what works, establish Hollywood character actors that can get people into the theaters.
Right.
So my initial reaction was like, oh, hold on, But I feel like if you're looking at big picture, what they might possibly be doing with the story, speculating with things that are already laid out in the Marvel universe and the comics, the source material, they could do something really cool. And then, of course, Dr. Doom, if you know much about his history, his face is scarred,
right.
So and he wears that mask. So you might actually, if they do it right, you may never realize it's Robert Downey Jr. Right.
Good point.
It'd be great, but they would pay him a lot of money for that. They never see him, so
exactly.
I don't know.
All right, so Noah Van Skyler, thank you so much, and Edward Woodward, thank you so much for being here. And of course, if we have any other comic book questions, we know who to call.
Yep,
all right,
definitely.
For more information, you can visit our website at watch.com.
Thank you.